Now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, a darker shade of black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. This is going to be part 2 to my video where I talked about Zoe Kravitz, Lisa Bonet, and the intergenerational dysfunction of the Afro-American Negro woman. Now, in part 1, I talked about how Zoe Kravitz, the daughter of Lisa Bonet, followed in her footsteps by posing nude on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. And in that magazine article where she was featured nude and topless in Rolling Stone magazine, your Zoe Kravitz decided to take several ad hominem personal attacks on Bill Cosby. And in that article, she calls Bill Cosby creepy and says he has a dark spirit. Unfortunately, your Zoe Kravitz is so spellbound by the white men she worships and deifies that, just like her mother, she can't see how these white men are really creepy by having her featured in Rolling Stone magazine nude in the exact same way her mother was featured over 30 years ago. No, that's not creepy to your Zoe Kravitz. However, a man who she never knew and only was heard about from her mother, this is the man she's going to call creepy and say has a dark spirit. But your Zoe Kravitz does not see the darkness going on, featuring all of those white men she has worked for in numerous films in Hollywood, the same white men who exploited her in the exact same way they exploited her mother. And these white men in these movies have exploited your Zoe Kravitz in many of these independent films, and I had the displeasure of watching many of those so-called films where your Zoe Kravitz was featured in sex scenes with white men, and one film where they had her just sitting there in a gratuitous nude scene with a white man. But your Bill Cosby is the creepy individual in Zoe Kravitz's eyes, and that's just shows how deeply dysfunctional your Zoe Kravitz is and how deeply disturbed this woman has become due to the culture she was taught by her mother, Lisa Bonet. Because your Lisa Bonet, just like your Zoe Kravitz before, thought Bill Cosby was the one who was the one making things bad for her. However, it was Bill Cosby who was the one trying to protect Lisa Bonet from being exploited by those white men over 30 years ago. Unfortunately, Lisa Bonet could not see what Bill Cosby was trying to do for her and trying to protect her the way a father would protect a daughter from being exploited by predators, and decided to go on and star in this Angel Heart movie where these old men featured her in nude scenes and sex scenes with a over 30 something year old Mickey Rourke, and it was just absolutely disgusting the way that girl was exploited in 1986. But yet Bill Cosby forgave her, gave her a second chance, and even gave her the greatest opportunity of a lifetime, her own television show. But your Lisa Bonet could not appreciate it, and your Zoe Kravitz, just like your Lisa Bonet, just does not appreciate the legacy that Bill Cosby left for black people. So she decides to participate in the exact same behavior and believes that she's going to get a different result as related to these white men who have already exploited her in Hollywood by featuring her in numerous films where she's been featured in these sex scenes with these white men and featured in nude scenes with these white men. She believes that these white men have her best interest at heart, and she believes that these white men have accepted her. What's happening to your Zoe Kravitz is that she is not only headed down the same dark road that her mother went down, she is now headed down the dark road of the tragic mulatto. And that dark road of the tragic mulatto was discussed in the 1934 film Imitation of Life and the 1959 cinematic classic Imitation of Life. And when I think about your Zoe Kravitz, I think about the 1959 version of Imitation of Life because your Zoe Kravitz is Sarah Jane from Imitation of Life. And just like your Sarah Jane from Imitation of Life, your Zoe Kravitz wants to be white, she wants to be accepted by white people, and she wants to have relationships with white men. And your Zoe Kravitz is sitting here in articles and features believing she is a white woman and believing that she has found the acceptance and approval of white people. It's clearly showing us how deeply spellbound this biracial Afro American Negro female is regarding white people. Unfortunately, just like Sarah Jane in Imitation of Life, your Zoe Kravitz is so caught up in the delusion of white acceptance that she cannot see how these white people truly see her because they don't see her on the same level of a white woman, and that can be seen by the supporting role she has played in films and the way they have featured her in many of the smaller independent films where she did many of those gratuitous nude scenes and gratuitous sex scenes. So basically, like Sarah Jane from Imitation of Life, in her aspirations to be a white woman, she has literally made herself into a garbage tier level white woman. Because if you've watched the 1959 version of Imitation of Life, you'll know that Sarah Jane runs away from her mother, goes all the way to California or Vegas, I believe, and is a showgirl in a sleazy show at one of these hotels. And this, it was her, in her eyes, making it because she's at least accepted by white people. Because that is the ultimate goal of a Zoe Kravitz who is so spellbound by the idea of being a tragic mulatto. She would rather be at the bottom of the white world than be at the top of the black world. And that's what makes this type of mulatto extremely dangerous is they would throw black people like a Bill Cosby under the bus just to get acceptance from white people. And they would throw a prominent black man like Bill Cosby under the bus so they could be at the bottom of white society. So a person like Zoe Kravitz would be the type to throw one of our prominent black men under the bus so she could go live in a trailer park with a bunch of poor white people and be so she could be accepted by white people. And that's what's really sad about women like your Zoe Kravitz is they see very little value in blackness and they want to destroy blackness so they can get acceptance from white people. This is the true self-hatred of a mulatto, and we see it on display with your Zoe Kravitz. And this, again, is a textbook case regarding intergenerational Negro dysfunction because just like the mother, Lisa Bonet, hated blackness, your Zoe Kravitz has been taught to hate blackness as well. And what's really sad is, again, this woman is sitting here believing that she is white, believing she has been accepted by whites, and believing she has gotten approval by whites. But what's going to happen to your Zoe Kravitz is the exact same thing that happens to women like Sarah Jane in Imitation of Life. When white people get tired of you or they see the truth regarding you, they literally beat you down and leave you in the street. And what's going to have to happen to your Zoe Kravitz is she's going to have her nigger moment, as Mr. Superboy used to say many times. And whenever these biracial Afro-American Negro females who smell themselves and believe that they're white get their nigger moment, it is a very, very humbling event because these females sit there and they think that they're white, they think they're better than anybody else, and they believe that they can go out here and destroy black people, and they deserve whatever karma comes to them because this type of Negro female is a treacherous bed wench, and she'll do anything again for the acceptance and approval of white people, including try to compromise black men like Bill Cosby. They never knew or knew anything about just to get points with white people who don't care about them. And they'll talk about how Bill Cosby, again, is supposed to be a guy with a dark spirit and is creepy, but they can't see the darkness of all of the white people they have deified and worshipped and put on pedestals and seen as great. Because I can see how those white men that your Lisa Bonet and your Zoe Kravitz deified and worshipped weren't that great because your white men were the ones who exploited Lisa Bonet back in the 1980s, and those same white men are exploiting Zoe Kravitz, her daughter, in the exact same way here in 2018. And what's sad about your Zoe Kravitz is that in the 30 years she's been alive, this female has not had the light bulb come on in her head to have the critical thinking skills and to process with some logic and reason and come to an understanding that when it comes down to Hollywood, they don't see her with the rainbow, they just see her as another Negro. And because they see her as another Negro, they have no respect for her in the same way they had no respect for your Lisa Bonet, they had no respect for your Halle Berry, and they had no respect for any mixed race actress who believes that she can find white acceptance in Hollywood. And that is the great tragedy as it relates to many of these women like your Zoe Kravitz, is they just can't connect the dots to understand that as it relates to this Hollywood, Hollywood does not respect a biracial woman who thinks that she's white. In its eyes, you're going to be black, and because they see you as black, they see you as someone to be exploited and presented in a negative light. And what's even more tragic is they would rather take that negative light from a white man than be presented in a positive light by a black man. And that's what's the other great tragedy regarding these tragic mulattoes is that they don't see anything positive in black. They would rather be, again, at the bottom of the white man's world than be at the top of the black man's world. And that's, again, what's really disturbing about your Zoe Kravitz. She would rather be the white man's court jester than be presented as a black man's helpmeet and support. And I say to all the brothers out there and all the sisters out there, leave this Zoe Kravitz to her fate. If she wants to be a tragic mulatto, let her head down that tragic road, but let us take our dollars away from this female because I don't support sellouts and I don't urge you to support sellouts because sellouts, they wanted to get their money from the white man, so leave them to their fate with the white man. And when your Zoe Kravitz went out here and took that shot at Bill Cosby in that article with Rolling Stone in an attempt to gain that white approval, that's when I said it's time to wash my hands with your Zoe Kravitz. Because if she wants to be white, then that she can go be with the white man and she can head down the road of the tragic mulatto because it's clear that she's hell-bent on being spellbound, and she's so spellbound that she's headed down the dark road to hell that has destroyed many mixed-race women's lives because they wanted to be white at any cost, not knowing what it was going to cost them everything, including their own souls. Because the one with the really true dark spirit is your Lisa Bonet, and the one with the darker spirit is your Zoe Kravitz, because they have made this white man a god to the point where they would compromise everything, including their own personal identity and their own intangibles of womanhood, in order to get acceptance from this white man. And if they want acceptance from that white man, the black community needs to pull its support from this female and let her hit the wall, which is what happens to most tragic mulattoes. She wanted a career with the white man, well, leave her to the white man and let the white man do what the white man does to these mixed race Negroes, because as it relates to the mixed race Negro, the house slave in many cases, what happens is this white man just exploits them, and then when somebody else comes around, he then gets rid of them. So just let fate go on and let things take its course as it relates to Zoe Kravitz, because she doesn't want to be black, and if you don't want to be black, you don't deserve the support of the black community. And this is something that black people need to do when it relates to females like this, is close ranks, because if they want their white man and their white approval, then leave them to that fate, and whatever happens to them, happens to them. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct publications, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.